Welcome to another thought-provoking episode of Youth Squad. In this episode, we are going to delve deep into an important but very often overlooked aspect of our lives, and that is the intersection of gender and security. There's this book that I recently had a chance to read about gender data gap called Invisible Women by Carolina Criado Perez. I hope I pronounced it right. The matter of security was often connected to the matter of gender within this book. And there were some aspects of these two topics that are, from my point of view, now common knowledge, but obviously that's not a fact for everyone. But there were also some aspects that even I wasn't aware of before. Even though I consider myself someone who's well informed on the topics of gender equality, gender security, and generally gender, these were some new aspects and new perspectives and new views, points of view that I wasn't quite aware before. So, for example, I never thought about how the architectural design of public restrooms were connected to security of women, which is one of the topics that is tackled within this book. Here, the author also tackles the issue of women's safety and how their safety is negatively affected due to the lack of public bathrooms in certain cities in the world, and how this is connected to higher rates of cases of rape and sexual assault. I found this topic very interesting, and I thought that it would be great for us to start a conversation about it within our series as well. Here with me in this episode is Dea, a young feminist from Kosovo, who will help me unravel the complexities of this topic, explore the impact of societal norms, and discuss how we can collectively build a more secure world for everyone, regardless of their gender identity. So, hello Dea, how are you?
Hi, Maria. I'm very excited to be here with you today. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while now, so yeah, I'm very excited.
Thank you for being here. It's my pleasure to have you on. Dea is also a big fan of Youth Squad podcast series, so it's also a pleasure to have someone who's also had a chance to hear the previous topics that we tackled. So, why do you find this topic of intersectionality between gender and security important? Why is it important for you personally?
For me personally, as a feminist and as a human rights activist, the idea of linking gender and security is kind of a piece that's very crucial for creating a fair society and an equal society in general. I think that giving security a gender lens and looking at it through the perspective of different genders is a very big deal for many reasons that really contribute to see the inclusivity perspective in the security in general. First of all, I believe that giving security like a gender lens helps us see the real picture of how different people from different genders kind of see security and have different security experiences. When we kind of think about it, women, men, and people of different gender identities have their own unique experiences and also their own unique vulnerabilities when it comes to security. For example, even if we see statistically, women are more likely to face things like gender-based violence, sexual harassment, or any form of gender-based discrimination. So these differences in security experiences kind of shed light onto other inequalities and the unfairness of the systematic unfairness of the society in general. If we see it in a bit more positive way, through this thing, we can also understand that different genders face different security challenges. We can also come up with smarter ways to tackle those challenges. We can make some tailored responses to fit each person's needs. And in this way, we can kind of put up some measures in place that keep everyone actually safe and make the security idea a bit more sustainable for everyone. There's
Yeah, I mean, I
another, yeah.
completely agree. Sorry, I completely agree with you, but I mean, completely agree with you. And I think that security, um, everything should be looked through the lenses of gender. You know, like everything has to be tailor
Mhm.
made, as you said yourself. And I think that's very crucial to understand. But with security, it's a matter of urgency more than importance in this sense. I think
Mhm.
because like if someone doesn't feel secure enough. How are they gonna, interact in any other aspect of their lives if they don't feel secure in the first place, right?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. It's very important to firstly feel secure. It's also a very important human right, but also, as you mentioned, you cannot actually do anything else if you don't feel safe in the environment that you live in. It also affects your performance in performing daily life
Mm.
activities as well as your creativity and everything like that. So, building a safe environment is of crucial importance for everyone. And if we see that this idea of feeling safe is very gendered, and different genders have a different idea of it and face different challenges, it's very important to kind of tackle the security on a gender lens as well. It's very important also to build trust through this, because the only way to kind of build trust and make people feel like they actually belong in a community
Mm.
that also gives something for them is through addressing their needs in a very proper way. And only through seeing it through a gender lens, you can also kind of get there and start to make the environment safer for everyone to feel like they belong in and they are taken care of.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I really like how you, through your answer, you really didn't only mention women as a group of people that are affected by gender tailor-made policies and initiatives when it comes to security, but also other
Hmm.
people of different genders that are more or less affected I mean, and consider and look at the security from different perspectives and with different experiences. And I think that's also really important. My next question for you is like, how does this gender identity actually? I mean, you mentioned it through your answer as well, but like, what did you think when you said that, other different different gender identities experience security differently? Like, what does that mean from your perspective?
Hmm. Yeah, from my perspective, I think that our gender identity has a pretty big impact on how safe we feel, both physically and also emotionally, and how we perceive security and safety in general. I believe that, for example, if we take women as a gender identity, we can say that they often face some very specific security concerns because of how the society perceives them in general. And this also applies to other gender identities as well. This is the thing that, if we get in a more practical sense of it, for example, even the people that usually work in the law enforcement institutions or the state institutions in general don't usually quite get it and don't usually tend to understand and how they should tailor their approach to the specific concerns of individuals from different gender identities. This then leads to unfair treatment, which then also reduces the trust of these people in institutions, thus leading to them feeling less safe in the society as a whole. So yeah, I believe that gender identity and security are closely connected. The issues we face, but also the biases that we encounter, and the
Mm.
sense of belonging to a community is it plays a crucial role on how safe we actually feel on our daily lives and in the places that we're in. So I believe that that's why it's very crucial to address this thing and to create a society that values and respects all gender identities, because that's the only way how everyone can feel safe and actually thrive in an environment that they're living.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we have to, I mean, obviously, understanding that gender is a social construct and that it is, differently perceived like, it is crucial to define what gender means, because it's also this feeling that we have, within ourselves, and how we, express ourselves, and but also how society perceives us. And unfortunately, if through the generations and generations and through time, femme-presenting people were generally perceived as weaker, and hence, if you want to, I don't know how to define this the best, but generally when someone would want to harm something, even in wars and different conflicts and stuff, women and, these femme-presenting people were the most affected groups, because if you wanted to harm another group, your opponent, you would harm something that they want to protect. And if we perceive women as something weak, then we would want to protect them. So I think this is a really interesting concept to understand as well, and that to understand that our gender has a lot of does a lot for us in the start, like from the moment you encounter the world, from the moment you start becoming, as you mentioned, a part of a community where you need to feel safe. Your gender plays a huge role, and it's something that we really need to take into consideration. What are the factors that affect someone's feeling of security? Maybe even if you feel comfortable sharing, like what does security mean for you? Like, when can you say that you actually feel secure?
Yeah, I think again, kind of mentioning what we were talking about, my personally for me, security is closely linked with capacity or the opportunity or the space for me to actually voice my concerns and also have them acknowledged, so that I can freely share what is kind of worrying me or making me feel unsafe, and then finding potentially a solution within the community to overcome this thing. Only after that we can maybe achieve a sense or a feeling of security. Uh, this process significantly helps with the feeling of belonging to a community or a group. Because, for example, for me personally, when I find myself in an environment that encourages the open expression of worries and also recognizes those worries and takes them generally into consideration, it kind of become a more secure atmosphere for me. Another very important component to what I feel when I say I'm feeling secure or safe is the equal treatment that you get. And when I say equal treatment, I mean both socially without the gender biases and everything, but also institutionally and also while policy making as well. I believe that these two components also play a pivotal role in like shaping one person's sense of feeling safe and secure, because only then you can actually feel that you're treated equal with every other member of the group or community. And this principle is also a fundamental human right that contributes to a sense of fairness and to a more just society, which then doesn't actually prejudice you based on your gender identity. And then, as you were mentioning it, creating a kind of sense of who you are, or giving like a stereotypical profile for you just based on the gender identity. So yeah, I think that my feeling of security is mainly linked to these two components, the equal treatment and also the ability to actually voice your concerns and them being heard and something being fixed regarding those.
Yeah, I mean, I really like how you tie the feeling of security to being able to say that you feel insecure. So, because like I think this is really important, even when women don't feel secure. I mean, women and other genders as well. But when they don't feel secure, they don't even feel secure enough to voice those concerns, and then this whole thing becomes a vicious cycle of them not being able to express their voice is not being heard, and then them feeling even more insecure and so insecure, and so it's like a whole
Yeah.
mess of
vicious
things.
cycle of unsafety. Yeah, I believe that this is one of the biggest problems, especially in the region,
Mm.
because we can see how low the reporting rates are regarding sexual harassment, gender-based violence as well, and this kind of lets us know, and it's like a warning for us that people do not even feel safe
Mm.
to go forward to the institutions that are there to actually give them that same sense of safety. So I believe that that is also that's why I also mentioned it, because it's very important for people to actually be able to say and to ask for their to request that their basic human rights are in place
Mm.
and they feel kind of safe in the environment that they are living in.
But where do you think it comes from? I mean, and this whole idea of you know, I mean, obviously, yes, we have, especially in the Western Balkans region, there's like a lot of problems with, rape cases,
Hmm.
domestic violence, gender-based violence in general, and it's present in all spheres of life. You know, not a single woman is an exception. Like whether you live in a rural area, whether you are this diplomat that works in politics and is extremely successful in that academic part of the world, you still face gender-based violence. You still feel insecure and unsafe because of this whole, you know, I don't know what it is. Like I don't know what the root is of targeting women and targeting femme presenting people, just for the fact that they're women or feminine.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a very complicated question to answer, but the main component of it being the patriarchal mentality that
Mm.
kind of sees a woman as weaker and that they kind of possess less capabilities than men do. And that's why the sense of superiority that the society gives men allows them to kind of feel superior to to all the femme presenting people, and that's why they kind of feel like they have they have a right and agency to actually tell what a woman can do, and also sometimes to even physically abuse the with femme presenting people in different stages or manners, because as you said, yeah, every I believe that every femme presenting people person is sometimes has witnessed at least some kind of gender-based violence, and it's a very sad thing to say, but yeah, I think that the very root of it is at the patriarchal mentality and how women are represented and how men feel about them as
Mm.
in general. So yeah, pretty much I think that's where the root of the problem is.
No, no, for sure. And I think what goes to prove your point is the fact that I heard a lot of experiences of trans people, trans men in particular, that felt this shift in people's approach to them once they started transitioning and once they started passing as male. As men,
Hmm.
like once they started looking like men, they started being treated with more respect, which
Hmm.
is really sad, and I believe very ironic to see when you are a person transitioning and you can actually see the shift of once they perceived you as feminine, you didn't change as a person, but
Yeah.
your appearances did. Your
Hmm.
voice may become a bit lower, but and then immediately people start respecting you more, and you don't look over your shoulder when you're walking down the street and it's dark. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's a very sad reality, but it's very true that only these gender identities say so much about how you are perceived in the society, and even if you are the most successful person, still you're kind of being looked down at if you have a counterpart who is a man and
Mm.
who actually, yeah.
Yeah, and what we can actually also witness in our countries in the Western Balkans is that even the female politicians that are very successful in their work or are not, even if they're trash politicians, they still get
Mm-hmm.
called out for different things than men are.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't wonder what someone was wearing if there were men, but
Yeah,
we really
exactly.
tend to pose that question when it's about a woman. And no matter what they are doing, whether they're really good at politics or really not, it's still the first question that we ask, like what were they wearing, what was she, what she looked like, and so on,
Mm-hmm.
and what the makeup was about, and how short her skirt was, and so on. And I think that also affects general feeling of security in that sphere as well, because like whatever pore of whatever part of society you want to become a part of, you will feel kind of targeted for just being who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And to relate to that, you also have a bit of a more higher pressure for you to keep a good example at. For example, if you're a woman in power, in politics, or even at security institutions as well, you have
Mm.
a way more pressure to kind of be good at everything, kind of to be more prepared, to not let anything go, and also be constantly aware of how you're looking and do some very um, look wise to look as society would like you to.
Mm.
So that's a very big, in my opinion, it's a very big problem as well, because you have to constantly be aware of everything that's surrounding you, which is not a pressure for men.
Mm.
So that also kind of harms the feeling of how safe and how accepted you are in a community as well.
And obviously, it is really connected to each other. The feeling of safety and feeling of belonging. It definitely is interconnected. You mentioned security institutions, and I think that's also one really important aspect. Gender responsive policies and decision makers making policies, and making politics gender sensitive. But when it comes down to real practice and when it comes down to real cases of gender-based violence or violence in general, we have to, consider the gender perspective. So my question is
Mhm.
for you, like, how are, institutions treating this issue? How gender sensitive are they in our region?
Mhm. I believe that they are trying, and the situation has been kind of improving, but with very small baby steps in the last years, because they are considering the gender sensitivity as a very new topic or new need, if I may say.
Mm.
But as we know, it's just been a bit fresher for them to start dealing with this issue, but still, I really don't think that they are doing enough to incorporate it on their everyday work, especially talking about security institutions, because I'm mostly researching on the security institutions in the Western Balkans and how gender sensitive they are in general. But for example, if we see that how many women are employed in security institutions, the numbers are highly low. For example, for police forces, it's around 15% of
Wow.
their whole staff, including the civilians as well and the uniformed staff, is women. So if we see these numbers, we can see that it's really challenging for them to actually be doing gender mainstreaming with a very small number of women that are actually employed there. And also, it gives us a big concern about how security is actually perceived. Because when you have a very low number of women and even lower number of women in decision making positions within the security institutions, you can see that their definition of security is not as inclusive as we would want it to be. Thus, the society's definition of security will also be affected by that. And
Mm.
also, their work will be affected by that, because you cannot actually provide security for the whole society if you don't have the voices of the society there as well. And when we kind of deal with the questions of why do not do women are a bit reluctant to join the security institutions. Again, the biggest answer that we get mainly is because of the patriarchy and how the society perceives that security is a field just for men.
Mm.
They link it to the physical force, assuming that men have a greater physical force, and that's what you need for someone to be safe and secure. And thus, they kind of feel that they kind of see the field as it's generally for men. But also, besides this, being the security field being perceived as a man-dominated part is also because of how they visualize it. For example, if we see the front parts and the people that are actually talking about security in our medias, you can see that it's very male dominated. So that's why people don't actually see that as a career opportunity. But some additional problems are then later when they actually get to the security institutions. As I said, it's like a 15% quota for them to be there for now. And
So there's
we
a
can see
quota, like there's a minimum of women that need to be in security
in
institutions.
some of our countries, there is a quota,
Mm.
but in some others, there isn't a quota, but it's like kind of encouraged for more women to be applying to those positions, but still not like a real number because they
Mm.
associate it with, because you need to pass a lot of tests and everything. So quotas are not really. I mean, their words are not really applicable in
Yeah.
such institutions. But yeah, even the ones that are actually there, the very patriarchal mentality that exists within the institution still affects the women that actually work there. For
Mm.
example, many of them do not hesitate to tell us about how they are usually treated like they possess less knowledge and less ability, and how they can talk about armed forces or how they can talk about police or arms in general when you have bigger, stronger men there who can actually do this job. So yeah, it's a very hard topic, but and I really don't know how well they're doing. In my perception as an activist, they're not doing that well because we can see every day how ill treated are the
Mm.
cases of gender-based violence, how bad are they portrayed in the media, and also how the institutions actually talk about them in a very not prioritizing and a very, very not gender sensitive way.
Mm. For
So
sure.
yeah, I think that there is a very long way to go, and to make the institutions a bit more gender friendly and gender sensitive, so that the security sense would be a bit more improved, maybe.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm completely, yeah, I completely agree with you in this sense. But what you mentioned is, people understanding, security institutions and generally these forces as a man-oriented area. I mean, it's definitely men-dominated, but because it is men-oriented in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's interesting because they're associated with force, with strength, with the physical, preparedness and so on, and they fail to understand that if you have, but that's also about it says a lot about our perception on gender-based violence. For example, if
Mm-hmm.
some victim of gender-based violence comes to a police station and reports gender-based violence, people tend to find physical traces of the violence happening, and very putting it on a second or even on a third place, asking about mental health, asking about how they were mentally affected by this incident. And so when you don't have this aspect prioritized and found important in general, you won't understand that it's important to have more women in police stations, more women as police
Mm-hmm.
workers, to understand that sometimes when a woman has been raped, she won't feel comfortable talking to someone who might look like someone who hurt her in the first place. So she will seek a solidarity in another woman and so on. So it's really important to understand all these complexities of gender-based violence and violence in general, and to understand the mental, the toll on mental health such instances take and have, and in order to create a more a better approach to this
Hmm.
topic in general. And do you think that obviously women make up 50% of the population, it's important to have them represented in all different sorts of institutions, and also in security institutions as well. But even if there is only men, it is still important for them to be educated. Do you agree with it?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's very important to firstly raise the numbers, but also to educate them on gender sensitivity, like for every employer that works in the security sector. I mean, in all sectors, but as we're talking now about security and about seeing how you mentioned it, that it's a very emergent thing and it requires immediate reaction. I believe that everyone should be trained and educated mostly on gender sensitivity and also gender equality because yeah, you can, even if you ideally employ the staff to be 50-50, still you have to kind of see how well educated all of them are. And It's a very, very important thing. As I was saying, it's very important for them to actually know and define gender-based violence as well, because as you were
Mm.
saying, people tend to look only for physical traces and also do not actually see sexual harassment or other types of psychological violence or economic violence, even at workplace within security institutions. We can see that people tend to neglect those kinds of violence in general. They only talk about physical violence and they do not recognize these other forms as actually them suffering or being subject to gender discrimination in general. So I believe that it's very, very important for them to be trained for themselves first about how they see gender equality and to kind of get to know more about the gender sensitive approach when they approach others as well, because it's a very, very sensitive topic. And the people that actually come forward to report those cases really need a very special gender sensitive treatment, which is barely happening nowadays.
Mm. You mentioned before that even these exams, like entrance exams, are focused on physical preparation and your physical performance. Do you think it would be helpful to have some entrance exams when you're entering the security forces and security sector in general, to also have this gender gender specific, gender oriented training or knowledge before you even
Mhm.
enter the security sector? I mean, this can be also help with the sexual education throughout the
The
general,
whole. Mhm.
yeah, the whole educational system has to be changed, that's for sure. But when we have people in these sectors, it's really important to have them well prepared for these positions. So do you think that some entrance exams that are gender specific would be helpful or not?
Yeah, I believe that they would be very, a very well addition for them to see how they actually see this, and it should be a criteria, in my opinion, for them to believe actually in human rights first,
Mm.
for them to actually have the power to work with the security. But I don't know how it would work in practice, because generally in the Western Balkans, we can see how low the interest is from the youth to actually take part and work in the security institutions. And when we were kind of presenting this thing that it would be a criteria for every police officer to undergo on a gender equality, human rights task, they were like, yeah, please, let's just not put any more criterias here because we really need people for now.
Mm.
So how it works in my country, they actually kind of get trained for gender equality, but those trainings are not very comprehensive, usually not done by professionals,
Mm.
because we can see from the results that it's kind of like a thing that they do just to tick the box because somebody required them to have this thing, and now, yes, we trained 10 police officers for gender equality,
There's
but
so
yeah.
many things that are done in that way. That's so sad to hear.
Yeah, it is, because it's super important for them to actually work in a proper way, and it would, in my opinion, it would actually prevent so many
Mm.
incidents being made, and especially talking about gender discrimination at workplace and everything. It's very important for them to be trained, and for them to be trained consistently, because some of the things, if you don't actually believe in them or don't work with them every day, you kind of need to be reminded. So I
Mm.
believe that these like training packages for gender equality should be like an annual basis or something like that, that everyone has to go through and just check where they are with their knowledge on how gender sensitive approach, how their gender sensitive approach should look like. So yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure, and also because the violence takes different shapes and forms, and it unfortunately evolves through time. Because back in the day we didn't have online violence, and now we have it, and the gender issue is portrayed even through that, through that perspective as well, and through online violence as well. So I think that's also important.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's very important to kind of be up to date with these, and also include the gender lens to kind of gender mainstream all the
Mm.
institutions, especially the security ones, considering how time sensitive their reactions are.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, sometimes time does all the matters the most in that sense, because there's these some violences just are more urgent than others, unfortunately, and but they're all interconnected. And you mentioned the different types of violence, and that's really important. So thank you for mentioning that as well. It's crucial for those people who have the power to help you in those situations actually understand that there are certain things that come first and can lead to even death, and that this is really important to recognize the early signs of violence, and the early signs of something that's really dangerous. Thank you for mentioning that, and thank you for giving this broad perspective. For my last questions, I would just like to ask you to point out actually what's our social and collective responsibility when it comes to making women and other femme-presenting people feel safe. And obviously, pressure to institutions to do their work and to be more gender sensitive is one aspect of it. But what can you do personally? Okay, we are both coming from kind of coming from affected groups. We are also like both women, so it comes. There's this whole different perspective of things when it comes from us, but what can we as women do to make other women feel safe, and what we as a society can do to make women us feel more safer.
Mm-hmm. I believe that we should be more active and to encourage reporting, and to also put more pressure into the institutions dealing with survivors of gender-based violence. As a society as a whole, we should be more reactive, if I may say, to
Mm.
cases of gender discrimination, and kind of be more aware and spread this awareness to other people that do not have daily contact, maybe with such ideas or such things. I believe that that's the biggest thing and the most urgent thing that we actually need to do, because we could see some very successful cases that when the society reacted, things were actually set in a more positive way,
Mm.
especially talking about gender based violence. But yes, as women as well, we should just be kind of willing to inform other women about their rights as well, and also about how they should not expect to be treated differently just because they're women, because sometimes we see that they kind of just live with that impression because they were grown with that impression, and that they kind of accept that different treatment just because they also feel like they kind of, it's not
Mm.
an unchangeable thing, if I may say. So yeah, that's activism plays a very big role in this, I believe. So this is what we can do, starting small and then also going up to the institutions as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you mentioned that what you just mentioned means that we have to recognize the traces of patriarchy we have within ourselves, the internalized patriarchy that we have all kind of adopted within our lives, and to also be vocal about our experiences. And I think that's really important because breaking the cycle of silence plays a huge role when you know when it comes to motivation of people to report gender-based violence and you know generally the feelings of insecurity, because sometimes we just normalize things and don't question it a lot, and then you know we understand at some point that it was actually problematic all along, and we understand that we didn't have to go through all of that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add? I mean, feel free to add anything you want.
No, I mean, I think we mentioned all of the most important things, so yeah.
I agree. I mean, there's definitely, this is a broad topic, and I really think that there's a lot to be said about it. I also think that you were the best guest that I could have think of when it comes to this topic, because you really know your stuff and you really came with some data to back up our personal experiences, and that's really important to understand that it's not just, you know, you and me now talking about something that you and I find important, but actually, you know, understanding that it's a general societal issue that we have to urgently resolve. So yeah, thank you for sharing all the data, and thank you for being my guest, and thank you for being a part of the Youth Squad.
And thank you so much for the opportunity. It was my pleasure to be here. And as you said, yeah, I'm a big fan of Youth Squad. So yeah, it's a very big pleasure for me to have the space to talk to you first and also share my expertise on this.
On such an important topic. So thank you, Dea, and thank you all for listening to this episode of Youth Squad. Stick around for another one. Thank you for listening to Youth Squad. My name is Maria. The Youth Squad podcast series is recorded under a small-scale project in the field of youth called Voicehood of Youth, which will cover 4 topics: human rights, gender equality, European multiculturalism, inclusion and diversity, and active participation. The project is implemented within the Erasmus Plus program and is financed by the Swedish National Agency. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you stay tuned for another episode.